You look around and wonder why the same people keep winning the money game while you stay locked in place. Why no matter how much effort you pour in, how many hours you trade, how much stress you carry, the results barely change. It feels unfair. It feels like the system is rigged. But that reaction is already the first mistake, because money does not respond to fairness. Money does not respond to effort. Money responds to psychology, and psychology responds to power. Most people never see this because they are too busy reacting, too busy surviving, too busy hoping the rules will eventually bend in their favor. They won't. Money is not moral. It is not kind. It does not reward good intentions. It flows toward those who understand how human behavior actually works. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago, not because he was obsessed with wealth, but because he was obsessed with power. And money is simply power, wearing a modern disguise. If you don't understand the psychology behind it, you will spend your entire life chasing effects instead of causes, working harder, saving more, waiting longer, and wondering why nothing fundamentally shifts. The uncomfortable truth is this: most people are poor, not because they lack intelligence, but because their minds are programmed incorrectly. They think money is something you earn, something you deserve, something granted by effort. That belief alone guarantees limitation. Because the moment you believe money is earned, you accept dependence. Dependence on bosses, dependence on systems, dependence on permission. Machiavelli warned that dependence is weakness, and weakness is always exploited. Look closely at the people who stay trapped. They all share the same illusion. They believe the world is fair enough that if they follow the rules, reward will arrive. They believe visibility comes before power. They believe honesty is leverage. Those beliefs are comforting, and that is precisely why they are dangerous. Comfort is the enemy of control. The wealthy do not operate from comfort. They operate from clarity. They see something others refuse to acknowledge. Human beings are predictable, emotional, reactive, and money flows toward those who can predict, influence, and position themselves above that behavior. This is where the psychological divide begins. The average person experiences money emotionally: fear when it leaves, relief when it arrives, anxiety when it slows down. They are governed by it. The strategist observes money coldly, as movement, as leverage, as signal. He does not ask, "How much did I earn?" He asks, "Where did control shift?" That difference alone separates survival from dominance. Most people think wealth is about accumulation, saving, stacking, holding. That is backwards. Accumulation without control creates fragility. The more you cling, the more fearful you become. The more fearful you become, the more predictable your behavior. Predictability is poverty. Machiavelli wrote that men are quick to forget danger when times are good. Money works the same way. People relax when they feel safe. They stop watching. They stop positioning. They stop preparing. And when conditions change, they are exposed. This is why sudden wealth disappears so often. The psychology never changed. Only the numbers did. The mind stayed poor. Here is what most will never tell you. Money does not amplify who you are. It reveals who you already were. If you were reactive before, you become reckless. If you were fearful before, you become defensive. If you were impulsive before, you become wasteful. The wealthy understand this, which is why they prioritize psychology before scale. They master detachment. Detachment does not mean apathy. It means control over reaction. When money is emotional, decisions are short-term. When money is neutral, decisions extend outward. The poor ask, "Can I afford this?" The strategist asks, "What does this position me for?" That question alone shifts the entire trajectory of a life. Most people never ask it because they are trained to think small, trained to optimize for comfort, trained to minimize risk. But minimizing risk is not how wealth is built. It is how dependence is maintained. Machiavelli observed that those who avoid risk avoid power, because power requires exposure, and exposure requires nerve. The psychology of making money begins here, with the realization that safety is not neutral. It is a choice, and every choice has consequences. Those who choose safety trade growth for predictability. Those who choose control trade comfort for leverage. There is no third path. This is why most people remain trapped, even when opportunities surround them. They see opportunities as threats, as disruptions, as risks to stability. So they retreat, and retreat is noticed. Money moves toward expansion, not contraction, toward confidence, not hesitation. This is not motivation, it is observation. Watch how money behaves in real environments, negotiations, markets, power dynamics. The person who speaks the least controls the frame. The person who reacts the slowest dictates direction. The person who appears least desperate commands terms. Desperation is visible, and it is punished. This is why Machiavelli emphasized appearance over intention, because humans respond to what they perceive, not what is true. If you look needy, you will be treated as replaceable. If you look stable, you will be tested. If you look powerful, you will be accommodated. Money follows that same logic. People believe wealth comes from proving value. In reality, it comes from positioning value. The worker proves the strategist positions. One chases approval. The other creates dependence. This is why working harder rarely produces freedom. It increases output, but not leverage. Leverage is psychological before it is structural. It begins when you stop tying your worth to effort. When you stop advertising struggle, when you stop explaining yourself. Silence changes perception. Machiavelli understood that silence unsettles people. They fill it with concessions, with information, with mistakes. The same applies to money decisions. Those who rush reveal weakness. Those who wait extract advantage. This is not patience for its own sake. It is calculated restraint. The poor spend to relieve tension. The strategist withholds to build pressure. Pressure creates movement. Movement creates opportunity. Most people release pressure immediately because they cannot tolerate discomfort. They buy, they explain, they justify. And in doing so, they lose leverage they never realized they had. This is why the psychology of making money feels unnatural at first. It contradicts social conditioning. It contradicts moral comfort. It contradicts the desire to be liked. But wealth has never been about being liked. It has always been about being necessary. And necessity is created, not requested. People who remain poor often believe they are invisible. In reality, they are predictable. And predictability is far worse. Once your behavior can be anticipated, it can be controlled. Once it can be controlled, it can be exploited. The wealthy reverse this dynamic. They become difficult to read, difficult to pressure, difficult to rush. Unreadability is protection. It prevents others from anchoring expectations onto you. It forces them to respond rather than dictate. Money flows toward those who control the tempo. This is why Machiavellian thinking is uncomfortable. It strips away illusions. It removes emotional padding. It forces you to confront a reality most people avoid. Money is not about merit. It is about positioning within human behavior. And until you accept that everything else is noise, most will stop here. They will feel resistance. They will label this perspective cynical or dangerous. That reaction is expected because the next layer goes deeper. And it explains why even intelligent, disciplined people remain trapped, while others rise effortlessly above them. Most people never reach that next layer because it requires abandoning comforting lies. Lies about fairness, lies about effort, lies about deserving. They cling to these ideas because without them they are forced to confront something far more unsettling: their lack of control. The psychology of making money is not built on optimism. It is built on realism. Machiavelli understood that men do not act according to ideals. They act according to incentives, fear, and advantage. Money obeys the same forces. This is why simply knowing financial principles does nothing. People read books, they watch videos, they repeat advice, and remain unchanged, because knowledge without identity shift is decoration. The worker identity is deeply ingrained. It teaches obedience disguised as virtue, hard work as morality, sacrifice as nobility. But money does not reward morality. It rewards utility. The moment you define yourself as a worker, you cap your leverage. Workers are interchangeable, predictable, replaceable, even highly paid ones. The strategist does not define himself by output. He defines himself by position. Position determines flow. Flow determines wealth. This is why some individuals earn in a month what others earn in a decade without appearing to work harder. They are not competing on effort. They are operating above it. Most people never look up. They look sideways. They compare salaries, hours, titles, while the real game is being played vertically above them. Machiavelli warned that those who focus on appearances at their own level miss the forces shaping their fate. The same applies here. Money does not circulate evenly. It pools. It concentrates. It moves towards structure. If you are not building structure, you are feeding one. This is why emotional spending is so destructive. It feels personal. It feels deserved. It feels relieving. But it trains the mind to associate money with comfort instead of control. Comfort weakens perception. The more you seek relief, the less you tolerate delay. The less you tolerate delay, the more you accept bad terms. Bad terms compound silently. Machiavelli observed that men trade long-term power for short-term peace. That is the psychology of poverty. The wealthy reverse this instinct. They accept temporary discomfort to secure permanent advantage. They delay gratification not because they are disciplined, but because they are strategic. They understand something most never grasp. Time does not reward patience. Position does. Waiting without leverage is stagnation. Waiting with leverage is dominance. This is where predator versus prey dynamics emerge. The prey reacts to circumstances. The predator anticipates them. The prey seeks certainty. The predator creates it. The prey explains himself. The predator lets others explain themselves. Money flows accordingly. Most people expose themselves constantly, their fears, their needs, their urgency. They reveal it through spending habits, through negotiation behavior, through lifestyle choices, and others read it instantly. Machiavelli understood that visibility is vulnerability when not paired with power. The modern equivalent is financial transparency without leverage. Those who reveal too much are priced accordingly. The wealthy cultivate selective opacity. They reveal enough to attract interest, never enough to lose advantage. This is not secrecy for paranoia. It is strategic withholding. Withholding creates mystique. Mystique creates perceived value. Value invites opportunity. This is why those who talk the most about money usually have the least control over it. They are seeking validation, approval, recognition. The strategist does not seek recognition. He seeks alignment. He positions himself where others must interact with him on his terms. That is the core psychological shift. Most people try to be chosen. The wealthy position themselves as unavoidable. This is not arrogance. It is design. Designing yourself into leverage requires detachment from social approval, from being understood, from being liked. Machiavelli warned that those who try to satisfy everyone satisfy no one, least of all themselves. Money punishes people-pleasing. It rewards clarity. Clarity allows decisive movement. Decisive movement attracts resources. Resources compound around decisiveness. This is why indecision is so costly. It is not neutral. It signals weakness. Weakness invites pressure. Pressure forces concessions, and concessions accumulate invisibly over time. The psychology of making money is not about greed. It is about boundaries. Knowing when to say nothing, when to walk away, when to let others overextend. The poor cling to opportunities. The strategist lets opportunities prove themselves. Desperation narrows perception. Calm expands it. This is why emotional stability is not optional. It is a financial weapon. Those who can remain unmoved during uncertainty gain access to outcomes others panic away from. Machiavelli noted that fortune favors those prepared to act when others freeze, not because they are brave, but because they are composed. Composition is cultivated. It comes from understanding that loss is not failure. It is feedback. The poor fear loss because they see it as final. The strategist reframes loss as tuition. This reframing changes everything. When loss is terminal, risk is avoided. When loss is instructional, risk becomes calculated. Calculated risk is where wealth is born. This is why so many intelligent people stay poor. They are not stupid. They are risk-averse in the wrong places. They protect small certainties instead of pursuing large asymmetries. Money moves asymmetrically. Small inputs, large outputs, but only for those positioned correctly. The worker seeks guaranteed returns. The strategist seeks leverage points. Leverage points are uncomfortable, uncertain, unfamiliar, which is why most never approach them. Machiavelli observed that men cling to the familiar, even when it harms them, especially when change threatens identity. This is the real barrier, not lack of information, but attachment to self-image. The moment you see yourself as someone who plays it safe, you unconsciously sabotage expansion. Your behavior aligns with identity, not logic. This is why the identity shift from worker to strategist is so critical. It is not cosmetic. It is structural. Once you stop seeing yourself as a participant and start seeing yourself as an architect, decisions change. You stop asking, what should I do next? You start asking, where should I stand? Standing in the right place does more than movement ever will. Most people exhaust themselves moving constantly while remaining in the wrong position. Movement without leverage is noise. The wealthy move less, but when they move, the environment shifts. That is not luck. It is psychology applied over time. The deeper truth is this. Money does not require constant action. It requires correct alignment. Alignment between perception, patience, and pressure. When these align, outcomes become inevitable. This inevitability is what separates true wealth from temporary success. And it is why those who understand this psychology appear calm, while others scramble. They are not calmer because they are confident. They are confident because they understand the game being played. And once you see it clearly, it becomes difficult to unsee. At this stage, something subtle begins to change. Not externally. Internally, the world starts to look different. You begin to notice how often people signal weakness without realizing it, how quickly they give up leverage in conversations, how easily they rush to fill silence, and how consistently money flows toward those who don't. This is where most people become uncomfortable, because awareness creates responsibility. Once you see the patterns, you can no longer blame the system. You can no longer hide behind effort. You can no longer pretend ignorance. Machiavelli warned that awareness is dangerous, not because it corrupts, but because it removes excuses. And excuses are what keep most people emotionally safe. The psychology of making money demands emotional discipline. Not positivity, not motivation. Discipline. The discipline to delay response. The discipline to sit with uncertainty. The discipline to observe instead of react. Reaction is expensive. Every reactive decision carries hidden costs. Missed leverage, poor timing, unfavorable terms. These costs are rarely obvious in the moment. They accumulate quietly. This is why people feel stuck without knowing why. Nothing catastrophic happened. No single mistake destroyed them. They simply reacted too often. Machiavelli understood that power is lost in increments, not explosions. So is wealth. The poor do not collapse, they erode. The wealthy protect against erosion by controlling their exposure. Exposure is not visibility. Exposure is vulnerability. Every time you reveal urgency, you expose yourself. Every time you reveal dependency, you expose yourself. Every time you reveal fear, you expose yourself. The strategist minimizes exposure not by hiding, but by structuring interactions so others move first. Whoever moves first gives information. Whoever gives information loses leverage. This applies everywhere. Negotiations, investments, career decisions, even personal spending. The person who must buy now is at a disadvantage. The person who can wait dictates price. Time is leverage only when you are not desperate. Desperation collapses time. This is why living at the edge financially is so dangerous. It forces speed. Speed forces mistakes. Mistakes compound. The wealthy engineers slack into their lives, not laziness. Slack. Slack creates optionality. Optionality is power. When you have options, you are no longer negotiating for survival. You're negotiating for advantage. Most people never experience this shift. They live inside tight margins, emotionally and financially. Tight margins force compliance. Machiavelli noted that those who lack resources must submit to those who have them. That principle has not changed. Money is one form of resource. Psychological composure is another. Those who possess both rarely lose. This is why the psychology of money cannot be separated from self-control. Impulse spending is not about desire. It is about emotional leakage. Buying becomes a release valve. The strategist sees this clearly and avoids becoming predictable to marketers, systems, or trends. Trends exist to harvest impatience. The herd rushes in. The strategist waits. Not forever, just long enough. Long enough to see who is panicking. Long enough to see who is bluffing. Long enough to see where fear creates mispricing. Fear always creates opportunity, but only for those not consumed by it. This is why downturns redistribute wealth, not because the rich are lucky, but because they remain solvent and composed, while others collapse emotionally. The motion precedes liquidation. People sell at the worst times, not because they must, but because they cannot tolerate uncertainty. Tolerance for uncertainty is a financial skill. It is rarely taught. Machiavelli described this as fortitude, the ability to withstand pressure without deforming. Those who deform reveal their limits. Markets test limits relentlessly. So do negotiations. So do life decisions. The psychology of making money is the psychology of maintaining form under stress. Most people lose form quickly. They compromise. They rationalize. They justify. And each justification moves them further from leverage. The strategist watches these behaviors in others and learns. He sees who breaks first, who talks too much, who gives up ground early. And he remembers, memory is power. Those who forget patterns repeat losses. Those who remember patterns avoid them. This is why emotional reactions are so costly. They erase memory. Fear narrows attention. Greed distorts judgment. Both lead to short-term thinking. Short-term thinking creates long-term dependence. Dependence is the final state of poverty, not low income, dependence. Dependence on approval, dependence on permission, dependence on stability provided by others. The strategist seeks independence of decision-making. This does not mean isolation. It means autonomy. Autonomy allows you to say no. No is one of the most powerful financial tools available. Those who cannot say no are priced accordingly. They accept bad deals, bad terms, bad conditions, because refusal feels risky. Machiavelli understood that refusal signals strength. Only those with options can refuse. Only those with strength can walk away. This is why wealth attracts wealth, not because of money itself, but because money creates optionality. Optionality compounds. Once you have it, your decisions improve. Improved decisions create more optionality. A feedback loop forms. The poor live in negative loops. The wealthy live in reinforcing ones. The difference begins psychologically. This is where the illusion of hard work collapses completely. Hard work without leverage simply increases fatigue. Fatigue reduces judgment. Reduced judgment leads to poor decisions. The cycle repeats. Machiavelli warned that exhausted men are easily ruled. The same applies financially. Those constantly grinding have no bandwidth to think strategically. Thinking requires distance. Distance requires margin. Margin requires restraint. Restraint feels unnatural in a culture obsessed with action. But action without direction is drift. The strategist is selective. Selective with time. Selective with energy. Selective with commitments. Commitment without leverage is entrapment. This is why saying yes too often keeps people poor. Every yes closes other doors. The wealthy understand opportunity cost instinctively. The poor feel it only after the fact. This is not intelligence. It is orientation. Orientation toward long-term control instead of short-term relief. The psychology of making money is the psychology of delay. Delay of gratification, delay of reaction, delay of disclosure. Delay creates asymmetry. While others rush, you observe. While others panic, you position. While others explain, you wait. This waiting is not passive. It is active restraint. Restraint is misunderstood because it produces no immediate signal, but its effects are cumulative. Machiavelli wrote that power is maintained quietly. So is wealth. The loud pursuit of money repels it. The quiet orchestration attracts it. Those who chase attention rarely keep resources. Those who control resources attract attention. This inversion confuses most people. They think visibility precedes power. In reality, power tolerates visibility when it is convenient. This is why true wealth often moves silently. By the time it is noticed, it is already entrenched. At this point, the question is no longer how to make money. That question belongs to beginners. The real question becomes how to stop leaking power. Because power leakage is subtle, daily, habitual, and invisible to those who have not trained themselves to see it. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The final phase is quieter than the rest. No declarations, no dramatic shifts, just a slow, deliberate separation from the herd. At this point, the psychology of making money stops being theoretical. It becomes operational. You begin to notice how often people sabotage themselves at the exact moment leverage is within reach. They rush to celebrate too early. They overshare plans. They relax, discipline the moment results appear. Machiavelli warned that men are most vulnerable at the moment of perceived victory because vigilance dissolves into comfort. Comfort invites intrusion. This is why wealth is rarely lost through dramatic collapse. It is lost through gradual exposure, loose boundaries, weak filters, unnecessary generosity. The poor believe generosity builds loyalty. The strategist knows loyalty is temporary. Interest is permanent. People follow advantage, not gratitude. This is not cynicism. It is observation. Money is not sustained by goodwill. It is sustained by structure. Structure outlives emotion. This is why the wealthy rely on systems rather than trust, contracts rather than promises, processes rather than intentions. Intentions fade, systems persist. The psychology of making money at this level is about designing environments that produce predictable outcomes. Predictability is not weakness when you control the variables. Most people are predictable in the worst way. Their reactions are known. Their spending patterns are obvious. Their breaking points are visible. The strategist becomes predictable only to himself. Others see inconsistency, distance, uncertainty. That uncertainty forces caution. Caution shifts power. Machiavelli understood that uncertainty is a form of control. When others cannot anticipate you, they hesitate. Hesitation creates openings. This is why remaining unreadable is so valuable. It prevents manipulation. It prevents anchoring. It prevents exploitation. The moment others believe they understand you, they price you. Pricing limits upside. This is why self-disclosure is expensive, especially financial self-disclosure. Talking about struggles invites sympathy, not leverage. Talking about wins invites competition, not alignment. The strategist speaks less as his influence grows. Silence is not emptiness. It is pressure without direction. And pressure without direction causes others to move first. Whoever moves first reveals intention. Intention reveals leverage. This is the final psychological edge. Understanding that money is not something you chase. It is something that moves toward clarity, restraint, and control. Those qualities repel chaos, and chaos is where most people live. They chase excitement, validation, fast results. Fast results are unstable. Stability comes from boring decisions, repeated consistently. Machiavelli admired rulers who appeared dull to their enemies. Because boredom hides preparation, the wealthy appear uninteresting for the same reason. They do not broadcast ambition. They execute it quietly. This quiet execution is often misunderstood as luck. Luck is simply preparation intersecting with timing. Timing favors those not emotionally compromised. Emotional compromise is the final trap. Even after wealth is built, emotion remains the greatest threat. Fear of loss, desire for approval, need for recognition. These pull people back into exposure. The strategist resists this by anchoring identity internally. He does not define himself by numbers. He defines himself by control. Control over time, control over reaction, control over direction. Money is a tool for maintaining that control, not a scoreboard. This distinction matters. Those who chase numbers never feel secure. Those who build systems sleep calmly regardless of fluctuation. Machiavelli understood that stability comes from control, not abundance. Abundance without control creates fragility. This is why many who suddenly acquire wealth lose it. They gain numbers without changing psychology. The psychology of making money is slower than people expect and more permanent. It does not rely on bursts of effort. It relies on consistent positioning. Positioning above emotion, above impulse, above herd behavior. This positioning isolates you. Isolation is the price. Most people cannot tolerate it. They want companionship, agreement, validation. Those desires pull them back into the herd. The strategist accepts isolation as temporary and necessary. Machiavelli wrote that those who rise above the crowd must expect resentment, not admiration. This is still true. As you detach, others will misunderstand your restraint as arrogance, your silence as coldness, your boundaries as selfishness. None of that matters. Wealth is not built on consensus. It is built on decisions made without applause. This is the final realization. Money is not engineered through hustle. It is engineered through restraint, through knowing when not to act, when not to speak, when not to spend. Each restraint compounds over time. Others begin to orbit your stability. Opportunities come to you instead of the reverse. Negotiations shift tone. Terms soften. Pressure disappears. This is when you know the psychology has changed. You no longer chase outcomes. You select them. You no longer seek permission. You create conditions. You no longer react to money. Money reacts to you. This is not a sudden transformation. It is a quiet one. So quiet that most never notice it happening until it is too late to catch up. Machiavelli described this state as inevitability, where outcomes feel preordained, not because of fate, but because preparation removed alternatives. At this level, wealth feels less like achievement and more like consequence. A consequence of seeing clearly, of thinking long-term, of refusing to participate in emotional chaos. This is why few ever reach it, not because it is complex, but because it requires letting go of comforting illusions. Illusions about fairness, illusions about effort, illusions about deserving. Once those dissolve, the game becomes simple, not easy, simple. And simplicity is dangerous to those who never prepared for it. You now understand why money flows the way it does, why some rise effortlessly, while others struggle endlessly. You see the patterns, the traps, the leaks. What you do with this awareness determines everything. Most will forget it and return to reaction.